We get some breaking news on this Friday afternoon. Kamala absolutely getting crushed. Shocking new poll. Key swing state. Really remarkable stuff to see, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to share that with you. Plus, this is a frightening soundbite. Let me just play you a little bit of what has just come in. This is Richard Blumenthal, and he's saying some alarming stuff about what just went down in Butler County, Pennsylvania.
I think the American people are going to be shocked, astonished, and appalled by what we will report to them about the failures by the Secret Service in this assassination attempt on the former president. But I think they also ought to be appalled and astonished by the failure of the Department of Homeland Security to be more forthcoming, to be as candid and frank as it should be to them in terms of providing information. And we are going to absolutely insist on the truth and the whole truth in documents and testimony as members of the United States Senate, but also as citizens.
What did you learn new today when you said they're going to be appalled? What specifically?
I'm not going to go into what we have learned in specifics. I'm giving you my reaction. And we will have a report very, very soon.
Wow. I mean, so this is pretty stunning. I think there's a lot to unpack there, and we will indeed in this show today. I just wanted to get that to you because it's effectively sort of hot off the presses right now as we continue to look at these polls. So there's a brand new one out, and this is really important to take a look at, guys, because she's not getting the kind of bounce that you would have expected. That certainly, and we'll take another look at Nate Silver's prediction model, but what you would have expected, both in terms of the DNC and now, of course, in terms of what happened there in the debate. Now, I just don't think it should come as anyone's surprise that the pundits are saying she won it, but for whatever reason, winning it at the pundit level is not translating, if you would, to American voters. In other words, they are not convinced that she can do the job. And I get it. I mean, after all, she has been there for the last 2.5 years and she has not been able to do the job. So this stuff is catching up with her and we're seeing it now in real time. Ladies and gentlemen, we got a brand new poll out. As I said, this one from Inside Advantage is taking a look at the all-important swing state of Michigan. And I want you to see this because it is not what you would necessarily, if you're one of the sort of status quo establishment types, have expected coming out of that debate. 49% to Trump. Now, granted, this is still extremely close. I want to caution that it's still within the margin of error, but this is according to Insider Advantage, which has a good reputation. This is coming out of Michigan, and they are in a point spread difference. So just neck and neck here. Again, Donald Trump at 49, Harris at 48, 2% voting otherwise. I mean, this is really something to see. Again, because she should, theoretically, I mean, we understand why she's not, but theoretically, right? If you go out and you win the debate and the press is saying you're so fantastic, and Taylor Swift, for goodness sakes, is endorsing you too, you should have more momentum, girl, all right? You ought to have more momentum. She doesn't have it. So then you start to say, well, why? And I think we perhaps if you're watching this show, by the way, subscribe, share, like, make a comment. We are live right now, so I see everything in real time. I would just say that maybe you get it, I get it, but the mainstream media certainly does not get it. I'm going to play some clips for you later on where you're just going to say, wow, like, are these people that stupid? And I guess they are that stupid, if you would, because they cannot seem to fathom why it is that Donald Trump is still here ahead in the poll. I mean, if you look at Nate Silver's prediction model, this is after the debate. Trump is still looking at a 61.6% chance of winning the whole thing. Kamala Harris, 38.1%. I mean, this is as of the 12th of September. And so what you're seeing, again, is that though he may have been a point or two higher going into the debate, he has not collapsed. This did not do much for her at all. And I think that you have to think through this because and we've talked about this, he does not poll well. If you compare and contrast, for example, his polling to the likes of what we've seen from any other candidate, I mean, you cannot look at his polls and just assume that he's actually, neck and neck. I think you have to assume that he's actually faring far better. This is something that my former colleague over at Fox, Jesse Waters, pointed.
Every single battleground is either tied or he's up 0.5 or she's up 0.5. But if you go in tied with Donald Trump, he's going to win.
I mean, in other words, because he tends to perform quite poorly in the polls, and we understand why, right? In other words, you're not allowed to like Donald Trump. You're not allowed to be voting for him. You are one of the persona non grata if you are. And so consequently, people are not entirely truthful in polls. And as a result, he'll do better on the day of the actual election. So it's really kind of important to consider all of those things right about now. But the reality is this, as we unpack these numbers, as we unpack the aftermath of the debate, and we can complain, and I have complained and I'll continue to complain about those ABC moderators, as we look at the bias within the media itself, you still have to remember Americans see through so much of this. This is why when you looked at some of the exit polling, or not exit polling, I should say, the just the what do you call this? The little groups, the focus groups. There we go. I'm having a Biden moment. The focus groups where CNN was talking with voters right after, and they were all saying, no, we're not convinced that she can do the job. But it's because it comes down to one thing, and it is the economy. They trust him more than her on the economy.
The economy here, who would better handle the economy is what we ask. Going into the debate, before the debate, 37% said Harris, 53% Trump. After the debate, again, margin of error stuff here, but numerically she lost a little ground. 35% said so after the debate, that she would better handle the economy. 55% said Trump, and we know that is one of his strongest suits across the polling in this election. And he seemed to hang on to that piece in this debate tonight, according to our poll of Debate Watch.
Indeed, he did. We got a lot to get to. I want to just give a quick shout out for our friends over at American Heart for Gold. If you're somebody who believes in keeping your money safe, you need to diversify, okay? That's my pledge to you. You must diversify. And when you diversify, you might want to look at something like precious metals. You should call my friends over at American Heart for Gold. They have a special deal for fans of the Trish Regan Show right now. You get up to $15,000 for qualified orders there when you purchase gold with them. $15,000 in free silver, I should point out. 1-844-495-1115. That's their number. Or all you have to do, if you got your cell phone handy, is text my name, Trish, to 65532. You can text it to 65532. This is American Heart for Gold. Again, $15,000 for qualified orders, up to $15,000 in free silver. So kind of a nice thing, especially when you consider how chaotic things are, ladies and gentlemen. My gosh. I mean, I've been saying, gold is one of those ways to diversify, one of those ways to kind of even out the effects of inflation. You need to be in the market, of course, to even that out. But gold is another tool. And that's why I personally do invest in it. And, you can go all the way. I've been talking about this since, the year 2000? So anyway, it's up around $2,500 right now. So it was back around 400 back then. So some people did well. Anyway, American Heart for Gold. TrishLovesGold.com. How can you forget that URL? TrishLovesGold.com. We got a lot to get to right now. Donald Trump coming out swinging. Donald Trump saying, you know what? No more debates. I'm so happy he said this, because what did I say on this show just yesterday afternoon? What did you hear me saying? No more debates. In other words, she doesn't really play fair. She's not debating. She's not having a real argument. She's not actually talking about policy. She's way out in the stratosphere, left field, as they'd say, just attacking him over and over and over. The total mean girl, attack. And then she's got the anchors joining in. So it's, like all the kids at the playground, just pow, pow, pow on Donald Trump. And so there's no point. Why would you do another debate like that? And you can't be assured of who the anchors and moderators are going to be and how they're going to treats you, whether they're going to treat you fairly or not. I mean, 100% of the coverage, this is amazing, on Kamala Harris on ABC News has been positive. Media Research Center crunched these numbers, while something like 90 some odd percent, like 98% of the coverage of Donald Trump has been negative. So think about that. Think about that bias. The lion's den that he was walking into. He sent out a Truth Social truth just yesterday, writing, when a prize fighter loses a fight, the first words out of his mouth are, "I want a rematch." Polls clearly show that I won the debate against Comrade Kamala Harris, the Democrats' radical left candidate, on Tuesday night, and she immediately called for a second debate. She and Crooked Joe have destroyed our country, he writes, with millions of criminals and mentally deranged people pouring into the USA, totally unchecked and unvetted, with inflation bankrupting our middle class. Everyone knows this, and all the other problems caused by Kamala and Joe. It was discussed in great detail during the first debate with Joe and the second debate with Comrade Harris. She was a no-show at the Fox debate and refused to do NBC and CBS. Kamala should focus on what she should have done during the last almost 4-year period. There will be no third debate. Well, good. You know what? I'm glad about that. I really am, because I think it's a total waste of his time. She's just going to say, oh, we're going to turn the page. We're going to turn the page. We're going to turn the page. Nobody believes you can turn the page, because guess what? We've been on that page for the last 3.5 years, lady. Yeah, and that is exactly why when you look at the new polls coming out today, what do you see coming out of Michigan? Trump is ahead. This is the first time we've seen this. Insider Advantage reporting that Trump is up by 1 point, still within the margin of error. But it has a lot to do with the fact that nobody believes Kamala Harris is capable of actually fixing our economy. All she did was go after him. You know the drill. And, you know, he had a few things to say about ABC,
we
too.
We kind of expected it, because when you look at Media Research Center, they said 100% of the stories covered on ABC about Kamala, 100% of the time was positive. 93% of the time when they covered you, it was negative. So it was infuriating to watch them fact check you and not her when she brought up IVF, when she brought up Project 2025 several times, and when she brought up Charlottesville. Here are some of the lies that she said about you. Listen.
A detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing. Couples who pray.
Really quickly, I just want to say, in defense of Project 2025, first of all, it's not the president's plan. It's actually the Heritage Foundation's plan. And it's a really good plan. I mean, he's like, what are you guys talking about? Like, it's not mine, it's theirs. So sure, you may have some conservative economic thinkers that have put that one together. I got to tell you, it's really good. You should go check it out. All you have to do is go to 25truth.com, 25truth.com, and read about it, because it's really good. I'm actually going to check it in real time right now, because I want to make sure that I gave you the right address. 25truth. And it's like, what is she talking about? Like, actually, you know what? If he did adopt the entire thing, I'd be pretty darn happy, because it's got 4 pillars and they're all really good. Yeah, that's it. 25truth.com. And they're there. They're talking about the truth about Project 25. I don't know what all the fear mongering's about. It's really darn good, especially on the energy policy and on education policy about getting rid of the deep state. So lady, she's just like glommed onto this. And he's like, well, it's not my thing. Like, it's theirs, but it's really good. So check it out when you can. Project 2025, and all you have to do is go to 25truth.com. Let's continue listening to this woman who just is like boom, 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 after him, and you're going to hear his response. And I have more to say, because there's some breaking news on ABC News that we got to get to.
And dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. If Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. On that day.
Totally not true. Go to Snopes.com. Why do they keep perpetuating this? Why do they lie?
140 law enforcement officers were injured. Oh boy. And some died. Donald Trump, the candidate.
Okay, like, you know what? I can't listen to it all. I'm gonna, it's really annoying, right? She is very, very, very annoying. This is their danger, incidentally. You run a woman like that. They tried it once before with, forgive me, I almost said Kamala Harris, Hillary Clinton. People could not stand Hillary Clinton. So it was as much a vote against Hillary as it was a vote for Trump back then. They wonder why they lost that. And here they are running someone who, by the way, really doesn't have the qualifications. I'm sorry, has never won anything. I mean, at least Hillary won the Senate. I would beg to differ. Kamala walked into the Senate there in California. That was kind of just a token election, for goodness sakes. She doesn't have the qualifications, and could she be more annoying than Hillary Clinton? I think so. Like, I actually had a very negative reaction to her. People did back in 2020, when she went all up, down, one side, the other on Joe Biden. About the busing thing, I showed you that clip yesterday. People don't like her. They fundamentally just don't like her. But let's hear what he has to say.
They ought to take away their license for the way they did that. Bloodbath was referring to the economy. Everybody loved the term because as soon as they heard the word, it's sort of a vicious word. But referring to the economy, they have created an economy. Bloodbath was the word that I used. And it was fine in that context. And they were trying to make it sound like there was a riot or something, and it was a bloodbath. IVF, I was a leader on IVF, the IVF, which is fertilization. I was a total leader on that. When I first heard about it, like right from the beginning, I was one of the leaders on it. And the Republican Party has been a leader on it. She tried to say it was just the opposite. The whole thing with abortion, what he said, I mean, it was incredible. I think he corrected me 6 times, and each time I was right. I believe each time I was right, didn't correct her at all, and she was saying these things. She was using, like, Charlottesville. She was using Charlottesville, and everybody, you take a look at Laura Ingraham, she did it incredibly. She had it totally debunked. She said that, in fact, it makes it angry. She gets angry when people hear about Charlottesville when they use that, because what they did is they stopped and they didn't put the following sentence in. And when they put the last sentence in, when it was all put together,
you know what they do? They take things out of context. And that's why I encourage you, make sure you subscribe, share, like, tell everybody the Trish Regan Show here live every day. I'm going to get to some of your comments later on in the program. But the reality is they will lie to you. They will manipulate whatever they can. And then they will turn around and say, no, it's the conservatives that are doing that. Remember, I actually showed you all that video of Joe Biden when he was really ailing. And I showed you the full-on clip, and yet they're sitting there saying still, cheap fakes, cheap fakes. No, guys, you could watch the entire clip and still come to the same conclusion. You didn't need to do any special editing or slow anything else down. You see everybody else walking fast, and Joe's walking really, really slow. In other words, if you'd actually listened to people on the other side, you never would have found yourself in this predicament to begin with unless this was all intended. You didn't need to have to take it away from Joe at the 11th hour to the point where he's so ticked off about it all. He's running around in a MAGA hat in Pennsylvania. Yeah, kid you not. You saw this, just so nobody says I'm making stuff up. Take a look. Talking to a Trump supporter, the guy's in a Trump hat, and then look at what he does. The guy takes the hat off, and he gives it to Biden. And then Biden puts it on. He has to have known what he was doing. You see that? He knew what he was doing. He is a little angry, as he should be. He should be with Kamala Harris. So now she's got a whole stack of problems in front of her, a whole stack of problems. Meanwhile, talking about problems, ABC News is looking at a new set of problems because there are accusations out online today that there's a whistleblower that will be coming forward accusing the network of effectively rigging this thing. So according to what has been circulated online, and this was actually, I should point out, tweeted out by really, really smart guy, billionaire hedge fund manager named Bill Ackman, who has definitely been red pilled. Like, he was really blue pill, and now he's totally red pill. And I think Israel and the college campuses had a lot to do with that. Anyway, he's a very smart guy. I've known him for a very long time, having covered markets, etc. And he retweeted something from Leading Report that says, breaking, ABC whistleblower allegedly will release an affidavit claiming the Harris campaign was given sample questions that were essentially the same questions as what were asked. They were also allegedly promising there at ABC News to go easy on Kamala Harris and not to fact check her, but indeed fact check Donald Trump. So he writes, if this turns out to be true, this is a serious breach of journalistic ethics and a death blow to the ABC network news reputation. He's right. I actually retweeted him with some comments myself. I thoroughly agree. If this is true, they got a real problem on their hands. I mean, ABC News, I think, as far as anybody is concerned, really dropped the ball there. The other night, on Monday night, they did not offer up a fair debate. They're forgetting their role as moderators is not to be one of the candidates, is not to be arguing with the candidates, but to be fair. And so you got to take your personal opinions and kind of check them for a minute. Well, the guy who's the chair of the Commission on Presidential Debates, he was horrified by this. And he was on Newsmax with Greta Van Susteren the other night saying, this is just wrong. Like, what we saw on stage should not have happened. Let's listen to him, and then back to ABC.
I have to tell you, though, that it really is sort of disheartening to hear that, because the American people want transparency, want a fair debate. They don't want people gaming. And now you hear that the networks are sort of up to their eyeballs in sort of, whether it's tilting it one way or another in order to get the debates because there's money. I mean, it's rather disheartening, because this is
and I thought that
democracy
one of the things that really shocked me last night was the way the moderators handled it. We always explain to our moderators, and we've done 33 of those, Greta, starting back in 1988, that their job is to be facilitators. They're not to get involved themselves. It's different than if you had someone on your show and you asked them a question and they answered in a different way than they'd said a month before. You would correct them. But moderators are not supposed to do that. A debate is between the candidates, not a debate between the candidate and the moderators. And these moderators, as far as I was concerned, it was the worst performance that I've seen. And as I said, I've done 33 of these things over the years. I don't know what their thoughts were, but they clearly were oversized, I think, on the way they treated the former president and the way they treated the present vice president. I think they bent backwards to help her.
Indeed, that's what we saw. They bent backwards to help her. What kind of news, quote unquote, news network actually does that? And what's going to be the repercussion here? Now, there's a whole bunch of stuff online, and we have to be very cautious and very careful with this stuff. Look, it wouldn't surprise me if they made certain promises, but what has been circulated online is an allegation from somebody who claims to be a whistleblower that suggests they gave Kamala Harris sample questions, but it turned out the sample questions were the same as the real questions. And then they made those certain promises. We will fact check him. We will not fact check you. It doesn't surprise me if that's the case. I mean, it's horrific. It does surprise me in that people should have more respect for themselves and their professions, and they give journalists a bad name overall by doing that, but not entirely. In other words, not surprising, because how can a news network have 100% positive coverage of Kamala Harris and 93% negative coverage of Donald Trump? I mean, that tells you exactly where they stand. And yet they're presenting themselves as right down the middle. It's not like the Trish Regan show where, look, I mean, I do actually call Trump out. When I don't like what he's doing, you'll hear about it. And I call everyone out. Like I just, maybe I just wear my heart on my sleeve and I'm a little too forthcoming and maybe say things even too early. But, that's how we roll here, so it makes it fun, right? And you may not always agree with me, but the reality is I'm going to do my best to present both sides and call various players out. I'm fair. I do have a bias. I tell you about the bias. If I'm anchoring a debate, you know what? I put the bias in the back pocket as much as one can, right? And you move forward. And that's what these anchors did not do. One of them was the former sorority sister of Kamala Harris. The other one who thinks he's like some kind of, model. And I feel bad because I know him and he's always been a nice guy. But I think he really wishes he was some kind of fashion model or an actor. Just check out his Instagram. I mean, wow. Woo. Anyway, the point being, he's a network news anchor. And even if you don't like Donald Trump, you can't do what they did. And I think that they're going to pay the price. And I don't think people will trust them very much going forward. It's amazing. You think about building a brand and how quickly it can be destroyed overnight. We saw that with Bud Light. You started to see some of that with Disney, right? Disney, which by the way owns ABC. You look at that stock price cut in half from where it was 5 years ago. a brand can be very quickly destroyed. It takes a long, long time to build one, and it's very, very easy to destroy it overnight. We've written about Disney at 76 Research. That's the financial research company I have. I just want to give a quick shout out for, if you have not gone to 76 Research, if you have not gone and gotten this, you need to do that, guys. We're coming up on a weekend, so I like to mention it going into the weekend to remind everybody, because put yourself first, right? Start investing for yourself. Try to do this. I really, people are, I have a 401k maybe, or, I have a pension plan. Great. I want to do everything you can, max those things out, and then do some more, okay? Because you can, believe me, you can find a way to afford it. You can't not afford to be investing in yourself for the long term. And that means investing in the equity markets, the stock market. And you're like, well, what do I do? What do I invest in? And that's where hopefully our research can help provide you some guidance, some ideas, because we have 3 model portfolios. I'm looking at the American Resilience portfolio, which is a growth-oriented portfolio ex NVIDIA, because we deliberately chose not to put NVIDIA in there, thinking you can get it in the S&P 500. You probably have it in some kind of tech fund, et cetera. Let's come up with some ideas about companies that would be a little less volatile, that are a little less rich in valuation at this particular moment in time. And one of our ads that we just put in mid-July, July 12th, one of our stock ads is actually up 8%. You've got a broader market that's down about 10% for tech. The tech S&P index, NVIDIA, has fallen about 16% in that same amount of time. So I'm very happy that the new addition to the portfolio, again, this is American Resilience, if you're looking for growth, is up 8%. But then the other thing is, all of this, here, I want to show you, if you guys haven't seen this, this is the basic income builder portfolio. Take a look at that, guys, because that shows you all of our stocks there, the top 5 holdings there. Median stock return on this income builder portfolio at 76 Research is up 15% versus the S&P up 6% in the same period of time. This would be for the 3 months ending 8/29/24. So really and truly, I created this because I wanted everybody to have some kind of way to invest, and I wanted to encourage them to invest, and I wanted to do this in the smartest, best way possible. So I created 76 Research for that reason. The other thing I would just mention is, if you go over there, go ahead and use the code word. Let me put that up for you, or at least the URL, 76research.com. Go and use code word dollar, DOLLAR. It's sort of our back to school special here, and a little bit of my gift to you, because you can get the 76 report for the first 2 months for just $1, and thereafter it goes to $9.95. You can cancel anytime, right? So this is no risk. And if nothing else, it's teaching you sort of, how to get your head in those markets and what are the opportunities in this space. We just did a fantastic, big piece, a big article on Bitcoin, if you're ready to be orange pilled, right? In today's 76 report, Rob and I were just over at a crypto conference, actually, in New York. Fascinating. Listening to Michael Saylor, we're going to have to get him on the show, speak about Bitcoin and his reasons for liking it. I've loved Bitcoin since it was $10 when I was first reporting on it. I've always found it to be incredibly fascinating. We met with a Ethereum company. The Ethereum, I think, is also incredibly interesting at this moment in time. And Rob and I get into all of these opportunities. It's a rather lengthy piece, so I encourage you to read it, and that's part of the 76 report. You can sign up, just $1 a month. You can get all of this research and information, but really some fascinating things to share with you. So go to 76research.com. When I look at sort of ABC in this environment right about now, though, I do think that Disney is probably like, we can't get rid of them fast enough. I mean, between The View and between what we just saw with the debate debacle, it's really turning into a gigantic mess. Now you have the chair of the Commission on Presidential Debates coming out. You got Bill Ackman coming out against you. You got most of the media coming out against you. It's scary stuff. All right, speaking of scary stuff, this is a big deal story. Senator Blumenthal from Connecticut, he's a Democrat, And he's part of the committee that's looking into what may have gone down there in Butler County, Pennsylvania, during that horrific assassination attempt on the former president of the United States. And I'm a little disturbed by what I heard from him. Not surprised, but I am surprised in that this is coming from a Democrat. I appreciate that it's coming from a Democrat, because I think people anticipate and expect Republicans to say this kind of thing. But in this case, this is a Northeastern Democrat saying, whoa, we got some real problems here, real problems. And we're coming out with a report, and you're going to be stunned as an American when you hear just exactly how bad this all is. Let's take a listen. Senator Richard Blumenthal.
I think the American people are going to be shocked, astonished, and appalled by what we will report to them about the failures by the Secret Service in this assassination attempt on the former president. But I think they also ought to be appalled and astonished by the failure of the Department of Homeland Security to be more forthcoming, to be as candid and frank as it should be to them in terms of providing information. And we are going to absolutely insist on the truth and the whole truth in documents and testimony as members of the United States Senate, but also as citizens.
What did you learn new today when you said they're going to be appalled? What specifically?
I'm not going to go into what we have learned in specifics. I'm giving you my reaction, and we will have a report very, very soon that I think will absolutely shock the American people, or it should, about the lapses and lags in the protection that was afforded that day, and the breakdown in communication, failure and responsibility.
Is that report coming today or tomorrow?
I'm sorry?
Is that report coming out tonight or tomorrow?
No.
So it's imminent. It's not here this week. And there are real concerns, as there should be. So that leaves me here with a lot of questions. I am grateful that they are being honest about all this. I wonder if this report will be released before the election. I hope it's released before the election. I think there will be some concern about doing so from the Kamala Harris camp, right? Because if it doesn't make the Department of Homeland Security look very good, if it doesn't make the Secret Service look very good, then you're going to have problems. Don't forget, the woman who was originally in charge of the Secret Service had been put there by Dr. Jill Biden. And the thinking was, oh, isn't this great? We have a woman who's head of Secret Service. And there was so much effectively DEI sort of influence going on there that I suspect they kind of lost track of, like, is everybody able to do their job? Is everyone doing the job? How many female Navy SEALs do you have? 0. And it's not because there aren't talented women. It's because there are certain physical demands in that job. And thus, they can't pass the exams in order to be a Navy SEAL. And so there was a lot of sort of, oh, isn't this great? We have so many women. We've increased the ranks of women in the Secret Service. And sure, that's great. That's great. But you need to make sure, again, you're playing everyone to the best position. You need to make sure that everyone can do the job and that you're not just, giving out tokens, so to speak. And that's a central theme that's kind of going on in this election anyway, because a lot of people feel like, okay, Kamala Harris didn't really deserve to be vice president. And she certainly doesn't deserve to be top of the ticket for the Democrat Party. So that complicates it all. And so consequently, I think that there's going to be a lot of pressure. I would anticipate that they will say, hey, we got to hold off on this. Hold off. And Americans will still continue to have these questions. But I credit Blumenthal. I mean, that is quite a statement, I think, from him. We don't understand why it is, for example, that Donald Trump didn't have enough people there. He had an outside rally. Was that because of politics? I think so. I think it absolutely was because of politics. I think they thought, well, maybe if we don't give him the necessary security, maybe we can dissuade him from actually doing these things. So that's number one. I mean, they had a zillion Secret Service people over at the dinner that Dr. Jill Biden was attending, yet they couldn't put anybody on this detail. So that's one issue. And then, of course, we don't understand why when the local law enforcement they're going back and forth on their walkie-talkies saying, hey, you know, there's a guy on the roof. I mean, they recognized him even earlier, right? They knew that there was a suspicious guy there. Why that wasn't ever communicated to Secret Service, and why did it take so long as this guy actually firing? He had to fire. And thank God, right? Thank God. And I say this as an American, not as somebody who likes Trump's policies better than Kamala Harris's or Joe Biden's. I say this as an American. This would have been bad for everyone. Everyone. Can you imagine the division that would have been cultivated as a result of that if they actually had gotten him? I mean, the fact that they didn't take this kid out beforehand is really perplexing. So these are just some of the obvious questions, right, on the surface. And it sounds like Blumenthal's really disturbed by what went down. And I think that, you know, we're going to have a lot of questions about all of this. I want to turn to the poll again, new poll coming out, and you can see this insider advantage is showing that in Michigan, Donald Trump is up by a point over Kamala Harris. When you look at Nate Silver's prediction model, you continue to see that Donald Trump is up better than 60%, 61.6% chance of Donald Trump winning compared with Kamala Harris. Now that's pretty remarkable. I mean, you've got Donald Trump still leading in the polls, with one just out of Michigan showing him up a point, with Nate Silver's prediction model still having him advanced over Kamala Harris. And the mainstream media doesn't understand this. They really just fundamentally don't get why this is happening. They're horrified. They're like, wait a second, we've been telling you, he's bad, he's bad, he's bad. And yet, people, you're still willing to go with him? Part of the reason, right, is because they had 4 years with Donald Trump. And they had a heck of a lot more of a successful economy. They had far less inflation. They had real wages. I'm talking wages adjusted for inflation that were growing the most they'd grown in 50 years. So there's a lot of reasons for people to kind of feel like things were better, even though the media tells them you shouldn't think that way. I mean, this next clip I got to show you because this is Morning Joe, and the wife of Joe, Mika Brzezinski, is on there just I don't get it. She said, I don't understand. Like, how could this possibly be that people would ever vote for Trump? I guess they're not watching your program, Mika. And they apparently are not drinking the nonsense that you're constantly spewing. Perhaps they actually buy their groceries themselves and fill up their gas tanks and are noticing they have less to work with under the current administration. Anyway, I want to play this for you.
Voters said they were glad she has a tax and economic plan, but they want to know how it will become law when Washington is so polarized. They know she wants to give assistance to first-time home buyers, but doubted that it was realistic. And Jeremy, I ask you, is their answer Donald Trump? Because I guess I see the questions. I think there was only so much that she could do in that debate in order to be as effective as she was. And I agree. There are a lot more questions. Of course, I would love to ask Kamala Harris about her leadership style and her plans and how she plans to execute. But are those undecided voters saying, I'm going to kind of lean Trump here because I want change? I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, she doesn't get it. She doesn't get it because people are saying, sure, I want change, but I want to go back. I want to go back to the way things were because things were better back then. And Kamala Harris doesn't represent change, even though she's telling you and she wants the media to spoon feed everybody that narrative that this is a new page and this is change. No one actually believes that because she's been in the seat for 3.5 years. And by the way, who's running the country, for goodness sakes, right now? I mean, if Joe's on the beach the whole time or incapacitated otherwise, or out there, you know, wearing MAGA hats in Pennsylvania, as we saw, then who's running the country while she's campaigning? It's anyone's guess. But the media they can't get it. They can't get it, whether it's Mika on Morning Joe or whether it's Philip Rines, who's, you know, from Hillary's camp, and then he got to play Donald Trump in the debate as he prepped Kamala Harris. He also just can't understand why people wouldn't vote for Joe Biden. And then he can't understand why they wouldn't vote for Kamala Harris. It's almost comical to listen to these people because they're so in their own world. They don't get where everybody else is. Watch.
On TV. I mean, they're not sitting there making funny faces. I mean, it's a big part of it. You're in a debate and, you know, in rough terms for 45 minutes, you are being watched. It's a split screen the entire time. And people, she has a disadvantage that people need to get to know her, and people want to get to know her. And Tuesday was a step in that, and hopefully, the three people that we saw with their comments are 3 million people. There's this slight, short, narrow sliver of people that, for whatever reason, couldn't decide between Donald Trump and Joe Biden for reasons I can't understand.
For reasons he can't understand. For whatever reason. For reasons I can't understand. Again, Philippe, it's not that hard. Philippe, look at the economy.
Now it's Joe Biden. Now it's Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. And everything you do, I don't know who any of those folks after watching the debate was like, I'm more inclined to vote for Donald Trump as opposed to what is wrong with that guy.
Well, Sarah has talked.
I don't know how we lived through the first 4 years watching that.
I'll tell you.
Right. I mean, you want to talk out of touch. Right? That is out of touch. They cannot, for the life of them, figure out why anybody would ever vote for Donald Trump, except that it's, to me anyway, and maybe I'm missing something, but to me it's very, very obvious. It's very obvious because people have basic needs, and they have the need for prosperity. They have the need for safety, and those basic needs are not being met. So when your government is allowing people to pour in across the border completely unchecked, and your community is struggling to deal with the impacts on crime, impacts on schools, impacts on healthcare, you're going to get kind of annoyed. And so that's one component of it. The other component is the obvious inflation issue, which, when you print out that much money like they did through their Inflation Reduction Act, I mean, that one just kills me, then you're going to have inflation. And they should have maybe thought about these things, but they don't. What's so scary is they're actually looking at putting more inflation into the economy. Kamala Harris said with a straight face that she was going to do $25,000 in giveaways to anybody who had never owned a home before. She's going to write you a blank check for $25,000 so you can go buy a house. Well, what does that do? When you keep saturating the market with all these dollars that people haven't really earned, what does it do? It causes more inflation. More inflation, guys, which I guess is an opportune time to mention our great sponsor, the American Hartford Gold. I'll just give them another shout out right now because you can get up to $15,000 special offer if your purchase is qualifying in free silver when you buy gold with American Hartford Gold. I mean, it's one of the best ways really to iron out for these inflation concerns. 1-844-495-1115 is their number. You can text my name, Trish, to 65532. Text Trish to 65532. Our great friends over at American Hartford Gold. All you can do is also go to what you can do is go to trishlovesgold.com, trishlovesgold.com. You can't forget that URL, right? So go check it out again for your chance, fans of this program, to get up to $15,000 in free silver on qualifying orders. But again, this inflation issue is a biggie. This inflation issue is the reason, in my estimation, why most Americans are not sort of okay with the idea of a Joe Biden or a Kamala Harris. I mean, Kamala Harris complicates it in part because she's just not that likable, right? But I think the other big problem, or the elephant in the room, is that she doesn't have the track record. I showed this to you recently. I want to take a quick peek at it again. So this is
Donald Trump has
a trend report, and you can hear her talking about the economy, and you can see where Democrats are.
I am offering what I describe as an opportunity.
You can see where Democrats are versus
the best economist in our country.
Independents. I'm going to just turn this down a little bit because I'm talking over it. But anyway, if you look at her talking about the economy and you look at this real-time trend alert, the blue line obviously being the Democrats, and they love her, and the Republicans obviously aren't buying any of this, and neither are the independents, who are in yellow. And I think that's really critical. This is what the mainstream media simply doesn't understand. But when you look at that yellow and the red tracking together, clearly they're not thinking that she's capable of actually coming through and doing anything that's worthwhile on the economy. So when you go back to places like Michigan, and I keep citing this Insider Advantage poll, but this Michigan poll, and he's now up in Michigan. He's tied or up everywhere in Pennsylvania. I mean, these places really matter, and these people are really hurting. So they screwed up royally by allowing that Inflation Reduction Act to ever happen in the first place. Nate Silver writing just the other day that it would be surprising if this had an impact on the scale of the Biden-Trump debate. For instance, Harris got the debate she wanted. If she isn't able to move the needle in the polls at least a little bit, maybe that means the country just isn't buying what she's selling. And Nate's right. Maybe the country's just not buying it. Okay, maybe they don't think that communism, and I'm going to be nicer, I'll say socialism, is the way forward. And you know what? They'd be right on that, because that's not who we are as a nation, right? We are a capitalist meritocracy that believes in the power of our capital markets and believes in the power of hard work and the willingness to, put in a little sweat equity. That goes a long way. We're not going to just give out anything to anyone just because you happen to look a certain way or you happen to have a certain name. I mean, it's not like back in the old days, right? That's kind of almost old Europe in style. And they're just going to reverse it because, if you come from this place or, this is the color of your skin or, you're a transgender, well, then suddenly we're going to give you this, that, and the other. That's not how it works. That's not America. And so they're trying, and believe me, you can spend any time looking at the school systems today, you see how much they're trying. It's scary. They want to change this country in a generation. But this generation, we're not having it. We're not having it. And guess what? Taylor Swift fans, they're too young, fortunately, to vote. So no one's having it. And that's why I am just loving looking at all of these numbers that continue to come in. Kamala Harris, just, she's living in La La Land. I get it. She's she lived in La La Land, entertaining all the Hollywood stars out there that support her. She's living in a different planet, on a different planet than the rest of America. In fact, Kamala Harris is so divorced from reality that Kamala Harris actually is proud of what I'm going to show you next. So Dick Cheney, Dick Cheney, right? He came out and announced his support of Kamala Harris. And this is really interesting, right? Because he's been a longstanding member of the GOP. The only problem for Dick Cheney is that the GOP is really different than, say, the GOP that Dick Cheney was part of. Dick Cheney, of course, being one of the prime architects that got us into the war with Iraq that now we have lived to regret. So Dick Cheney is not exactly who you want to hold up and be like, oh, I got his endorsement. Dick Cheney's endorsing me. Woohoo! That's not who you want to put forward. I mean, you don't want to do that if you're part of the GOP these days, and you don't want to do that if you're a Democrat. No one should actually want to do that. But for some reason, she's really, really psyched about the Dick Cheney endorsement. Watch.
I actually have the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney.
Dick Cheney and Satan. That's next.
The Sith Lord is back.
Like a demon, it rises again.
Dick Cheney, Darth Vader, Satan.
Thank you to Satan for giving me inspiration on how to play this role.
We don't need Dick Cheney.
Dick Cheney was dangerous. That war.
The only thing you got to do is just be better than Dick Cheney.
I like to see Dick Cheney exposed. He's a liar.
I actually have the endorsement of
former
Vice President Dick Cheney.
You were part of the Dick Cheney cult that led to hundreds of thousands of innocent Iraqis being killed because of the cult you were in.
Cheney dishonestly made up the idea they had nuclear weapons. Just lied. Why do they want these wars? What is it that they don't like somebody because they don't like the look of their face?
Irrelevant national embarrassment.
Anyway, the point is, Kamala's like, woohoo, I got Dick Cheney. I'm going to mention on this ABC News debate so all of America can hear, I got Dick Cheney. So again, just completely out of touch with reality. Completely, totally out of touch. Rob and I actually were talking about this on our 76 channel just the other day, because what's crazy about some of these price controls that she has advanced, she's actually talking about price controls, is that funny enough, I guess Dick Cheney does like her. Funny enough, this price control stuff was actually attempted back in the 1970s under Nixon. And guess who led it all? Dick Cheney. He He actually put in price controls under Nixon. And of course, they didn't work because price controls never do. But sure enough, Kamala, who's got the support of Dick Cheney, was right there, ready, willing, and able to say, I am going to put in price controls. That's my answer to everything. It never works. It never has. They've tried it all over the world, most recently in Venezuela, okay? Yeah, you see how that works out. Well, Dick Cheney, he tried it under Nixon, didn't quite fly. Rob and I talked about this on the 76 channel. You can go to @76research if you want to follow all our videos over there. We just started, so it's a very, very, very small channel. This one's still pretty small, but gosh, you guys have been great. I mean, we're upwards of 360,000 now. I'm looking at the numbers, and my team were like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. My very, very small team, which is just a couple people. But anyway, we're super excited. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Keep subscribing. Go check out the 76 report as well. By the way, code word dollar, DOLLAR, if you want to get the 76 report, or for those of you that are really into investing and you really want, I mean, in my estimation, this is just the best that you're going to find. This is better than any that, you know, they charge thousands and thousands of dollars for this stuff. It's crazy on Wall Street, and the hedge funds subscribe to this stuff. And my whole thing with Rob and my pitch was, hey, we can do this on a much bigger scale, right? Because of all of you guys. And so you don't need to be going straight to these Wall Street firms. We can do this independently and cheaply by giving it to so many people. And so it's really more of a volume play, if you would. So I'm just totally transparent in that. It's $1 a month to start for the first 2 months, or you can sign up for, as I said, the Founders Club, and get all the research plus the 76 report, or you can look at some of the model portfolios. You can buy one of the model portfolios and kind of tiptoe in that way. So do go over to 76research.com if you're going to get the 76 report. Code word dollar, DOLLAR. But we talked about Dick Cheney again on the 76 show, and we've also looked at his involvement, for example, in the funding of Ukraine, et cetera. So it's actually not surprising, really. It's just not surprising that he's supporting her. What's surprising is that she's so proud of it. So darn proud. Kamala Harris, my goodness, my goodness. You know, again, when we look at these numbers, ladies and gentlemen, and we see what's going on in terms of the economy, in terms of inflation, you got to think about healthcare as well, because the healthcare has been honestly, like, just insane. When I look at these numbers, I'm astonished. And the prediction is that healthcare costs are going to continue to go up by some 9% in 2025. Like, something has to happen. So I sat down just yesterday, right before the show, with a brilliant guy who actually is looking at healthcare policy for AFP, Americans for Prosperity. His name is Dean Clancy, and I want to play you some of that interview right now. Joining me right now with look at the mess healthcare has really become. And also, actually, we're going to try that one more time, because I do want to play this interview for you. Guys, again, this is Dean Clancy. He's from AFP, and just he has a brilliant sort of perspective on all of this. We'll give it a shot. Joining me right now with look at the mess healthcare has really become. And you know what? That's not working. So we are going to try that again on Monday. Forgive me. We will make sure that happens. It's a fantastic interview. I may actually put it out over the weekend, so be on the lookout. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, do me that favor. Make sure you subscribe, you hit the bell. That way you'll get the alerts. And if you have an interest in healthcare and what exactly is happening in that space, you definitely want to watch this interview. It's called The Personal Option, thepersonaloption.com. You can go to that website, and they have some ideas on how you can lower your costs and how we as a nation start to lower our costs on healthcare, because you need sort of more market sensibility, if you would, back in there. Imagine that. Yeah, a little market sensibility would go a long ways, a long ways. But again, I just leave you with this knowledge that, in fact, it's not over. Kamala Harris had hoped that she would come out the victor on this thing, and that she would actually start to see a huge lift in the polls as a result of the debate. I don't think that he was necessarily his best in that debate. I mean, he'll tell you he won. He did, in the sense that, you know, she's not doing what she should have done in the polls based on how much she attacked. But I think that the people who really lost out in that debate, frankly, were the American people, because we didn't get to hear enough policy. So when I say, it's like, who won? Did the moderators win? I mean, did they get their point across? Enough. No, because they just made themselves look foolish as journalists. Did Kamala win? No. She made herself look like a very mean person who actually doesn't have the substance to debate real policy. Did he win? Well, I think people still trust him on the economy, but it was basically a lost opportunity because he should have been able to smack her down like one after another. Instead, he was being put on the defensive. So it wasn't a, quote, perfect debate, right? But it's not having the effect that she had hoped. Again, with Michigan coming in, Donald Trump a point ahead. We got a lot coming your way this weekend, so make sure you subscribe, make sure you share. It is great to have you. It really, really is. I just want to go out to some of your comments and reactions right now. Again, we're in real time. Kirsten, great to have you. I'm seeing so many new names, which is wonderful. Please do me the favor of making sure that you subscribe, hit the bell. Dawn, good to see you back here. A lot of people saying that they understand it, right? They really, really do understand why it is that people are voting for Donald Trump. Even people that were actually left before. Like if you were blue and now you're crossing over, it's those independents that he's increasingly winning and those people that are on the margin. So really fascinating to see this happen. I'm really just amazed, really and truly. I think that Harris is, Don, to your point, I'm reading your comment here, Harris is losing and will lose badly. I think so. Only because, again, I look back to the last two election cycles and where Donald Trump was at this stage of the game. And then he came through and won in 2016. If I compare and contrast where he was in 2020 versus now, he's definitely way ahead of where he was back in 2020. He's also further ahead of where he was in 2016, but he had fallen in 2020, let's be real, from where he was in 16. And I think that people were just exhausted by that time. They were just exhausted. And then so much has come forward and so much has come out. And then the reality of where our economy is has really sunk in for everybody that they're like, okay, I'm just not going to make this mistake twice. And so that's where we are. And I suspect Americans are not going to make that mistake twice. Anything can happen, and you have to be very well aware of the games that are played and the absentee voting and all of that stuff. Alarming, right? Like, so in some ways he has to win by that much more so as to ensure that any shenanigans that might possibly go down really, don't go down in the kind of way that some are anticipating. With that in mind, did you see the story on Fani Willis today, guys? Let me see if I can bring that headline up for you. Fani Willis down in Georgia somehow doesn't think that the law applies to her in any way, shape, or form. I think we knew that, right? About Fani, whose ethics have been breached, shall we say. Let's see. So this just crossing, Fani Willis saying that she is actually not going to be part of the hearing. This is from, I guess, a local publication there in Georgia. Fani Willis plans to defy subpoena and skip Senate hearing. The Fulton County District Attorney's fight with Georgia Republicans is expected to move to the courts. So she's not going to be part of that. There's a lot of concern that she is just too compromised to actually do this job. And that's what this is centering around, just whether or not she kind of overstepped her authority, if you would, and by the way, had too much of a conflict of interest, etc. So she doesn't want to be part of that in any way, shape, or form. So Fani Willis saying, well, I don't have to do that. But except you do, right? Because people are held in contempt of court. I mean, where's Steve Bannon right now? Guess what? He had to go to jail because he defied a subpoena. So Fani Willis, why can you defy the subpoena but no one else? The other thing that's important to know about Georgia is that just yesterday we got news, this was breaking in the New York Times, that they threw out 3 of the cases against Donald Trump. Really pretty amazing. They're throwing these things out, which tells you that there was nothing, like literally nothing there. And I'm troubled by it, because it does make you wonder about the interference issue once again. So they tied him up in courts. They made him sit there in the courtroom. Why? So he couldn't go to a rally. They couldn't campaign. They wanted to keep him off of the ballot, and they thought that somehow they'd be able to. Jesse Waters making a good point there on Fox just last night, saying like, look, can you imagine if he hadn't had to do that?
They had to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on lawyers because you guys were arresting him and prosecuting him on BS charges. If that money was better spent, then this would probably be a 49-state landslide victory, which I'm not predicting.
Wow. No, he's not predicting that. But again, I just want to go back to Michigan. You know, this is remarkable to see. He's up in Michigan, and I think that's going to continue. So Jesse Waters rightly saying, like, imagine what things would be like. Imagine if he hadn't had to go through all that hassle. I mean, the brand damage, right, that they've done to the guy, and the financial damage that they've done, and the sort of tying up of one's time, because you can't be campaigning if you got to be in the courtroom from 9 to 5 every day. It's wild. It really is. It's just wild to see. I want you guys to have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful weekend. Make sure that you like, you subscribe, you hit the bell. I will be back with more videos throughout the weekend. We will definitely try to make sure that you get that video that I promised there on healthcare out to you. And I'll be back on Monday. I'll be back if anything happens over the weekend. You know, I'm always here. I am committed to this. I thank you for your commitment to the show, and I will see you live on Monday.